Welcome to the Bank with the Backdoor podcast. My name's at J Don't Fade. We're kicking it off here at 9:30 on the dot on a Saturday night. A lot going on right now. Currently, we got the draft coming up. We've got baseball in full swing. Yesterday was Jackie Robinson Day, important day, one of my favorite days throughout the season. It's in the beginning of the year, so usually the Orioles are not out of playoff contention yet at that point, and it's just a good day to celebrate and kind of look back on baseball's history and some of its dark past and some of its school past too, with what Jackie was able to do for the sport. So we're going to dive in here. We're going to talk a little bit about little preview for the show today. We're going to talk a little bit about Kyler Murray and his contract. Just real briefly, I want to touch on that a little bit. It's been a big story in the NFL world. Not much going on in Bills land. I know they're planning on getting guys involved in the building pretty soon here. We're going to be diving into quickly just a little bit about the draft, a prospect that I really like and someone that I think is probably going to be attainable at our pick. Maybe two guys I'll talk about, wide receivers. And then next week, we're going to do what we're going to do just to kind of get you hyped up for that. We're going to talk a lot about the draft next week. It's going to be pretty much specifically based in draft next week. Bills are looking for a cornerback. They're looking for a wide receiver. You talk to 30 different Bills fans, you'll get 30 different answers on what they're looking for this year to kind of push them over the hump. I think that they've probably already done that with the additions of Von Miller and a couple other guys and locking up, Steph Diggs, Maryland Turpine. Probably grew up an Orioles fan. I mention that every time I talk about him. Maybe he grew up he probably wouldn't grow up a Nationals fan. What do you think, Josh, right?
I don't know nothing, man.
Right. So, yeah, either way, Steph Diggs, he's a proud Maryland guy. He's supposed to be a Raven, and he wanted to be a Raven, and the Ravens apparently didn't bring him in obviously didn't draft him. Went pretty late in the draft. But either way, is it DFW? What do they call that area? The DC Baltimore. Is it DCW?
Man, I don't know because I confuse it with the airport name all the time.
I know, right? Yeah.
The airport's BWI, but I can't think. It's like the
It definitely starts with a D, doesn't it?
Maybe
it's DCB, the
DTW, maybe?
DC Baltimore area. I have no idea.
I don't know, man.
No idea, but they got good crab and they got a beautiful stadium, the most beautiful stadium in all of baseball. I'll be honest, it's the second most beautiful stadium at PNC Park. But either way, it's a beautiful stadium. And we're going to dive into the show here. So let's go ahead and get it kicked off here. Again, Bank with the Backdoor podcast. I want to first start with introducing our guest here. He's going to be here. He's going to speak a lot on the Orioles system and just in general baseball, because we did have Jackie Robinson yesterday, so we wanted to get a little bit more baseball-centric with this and shine a light on that and talk some upcoming teams like the Orioles, talk about some of the prospects, some of the higher prospects in baseball these days that luckily happen to be Orioles. So, Josh, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
How's it going, everybody? My name's Josh, at Out of State O's on Twitter. I do a podcast called Talking Birdie at Podcast Birdie on Twitter. We just talk about O's on there pretty much entirely, 100%. Outside of that, when Jason's going to talk about football entirely, I'm not going to say anything because I know nothing. I am 100% baseball focused. Live in Ohio, somehow ended up an Orioles fan, but glad to be here, man. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, man. Awesome to have you on. And I'm going to cover the football here, and then we're going to dive into so you can just sit there and you can stare at Josh and stare at me, and I'll talk here. I'll be the talking head for the moment. So
100% useless football
when it comes to football, but baseball, he knows his stuff. He does he does on top of the Talking Birdie podcast, which I love. He does a recap. Generally, he didn't do it last night, but he does it generally every night. Definitely something that I chime in for just to see his facial expressions. Usually a smile. I don't know how he's done it, but usually a smile while he's doing the recaps, even though some nights are tougher than others. Last night was a fun one, but hopefully tonight's going to be. Right now, just a quick update. The Orioles are currently in a rain delay. Hail is raining down on the heads of the Bronx Bombers and the Baltimore Orioles. Maybe not now. There's probably a tarp out there. I'm assuming they're probably in the dugout. Either way, the Orioles have a 2-0 lead on a Cedric Mullins home run. I didn't see the home run. Where did it go over Utah?
Not quite. Very close, but I would definitely pull that clip up whenever you can because that was it was a shot, man.
Was it in Cedi's like that? So where they have the score, the out-of-town scoreboard, and that little section right there. He loves that section. He seems
that's like right where it went, right in front of the Utah Street gate. So it was Tyon had him 3-0.
Dude.
Yeah, he hit it 422, I think, 433, something like that.
For Cedric, think about it. This is a guy that came out like, he doesn't have power. He's not a powerful guy. MLB The Show didn't think he was very powerful. I don't know if they still do. They don't give him a ton of power. But, for a guy that big, I've met Cedric Mullins in person. Actually, my first Oriole games I ever went to, well, as an adult, I've been there as a kid. First, as an adult, Camden Yards last year, I took my son, and Cedric was walking around signing autographs. I don't think they were supposed to be, but he was walking around signing autographs with Hayes, and I think Mountie might have been the other side. And Cedric came down, and my son, that was the first Oriole got to meet. I'm like, here you go, thank him, thank you, Mr. Mullins. And, he's sitting there, and he's not, I'm 6'5", but Cedric is a very small human being. He's not a very big guy. He's very quick, very fast. Right, 5'9". Yeah. And to have power like that come out of a guy that size is just insane, which means his swing mechanics are probably pretty spot on.
Yeah, especially after last year. I mean, they sent this guy down to Bowie in 2019, down to Double-A baseball after playing with the Orioles for most of the season there. Pretty insane human story.
And he goes for 30 for 30. He's the first Oriole. Even Cal Ripken didn't do that. Cal didn't do that. I mean, I don't know if Cal would have done that with the stealing numbers he had, but Cal didn't do that. Manny didn't do that. AJ never did that. Surprise! I think AJ was AJ got very close a couple times because AJ was able to steal a little bit. So AJ got pretty close sometimes. If everybody knows, AJ is my favorite Oriole and athlete and human probably of all time. But either way, never got that close. Said he did it. And yeah, that's enough Oriole talk for now. We're gonna jump into football. Kyler Murray's contract. So Kyler Murray has said, or it's been reported, I don't know if it's been verified. I'm sure it has been verified. I'm sure the source is real. But Kyler Murray has said he's not going to play without a new contract. I think part of that is obviously a lot of the quarterbacks getting paid. However, I don't know that this is a smart deal for Kyler Murray. And at the same time, I don't know that Kyler Murray being in football ever was a smart move. I've always said that he should have went to the MLB. The amount of money that he would have made there, probably, as he is a quarterback now, but it's more risk for injury in the NFL. I mean, you take head hits. He's not a big guy. He would have went to Oakland. I think that at this point, he probably would have already been up with the Athletics at some point. He may have already been traded to a contender, as we saw Oakland sell off, most of their team, Matt Olson, Matt Chapman, and anybody else they could get rid of. Sean Manaea. He just went to. He's pitching well enough for San Diego. Had a really good first outing. And anybody else they have a value, they seem to sell off. But I think he would have been there. I think he would have got a really lucrative, large contract because he was a good baseball player. People forget he was a first-round pick, and he was not like a low first-round pick. He was a high first-round pick. Top 10, I think he was, 7th overall? 8th overall?
That sounds right. I can double-check that.
Yeah, just double check. He was definitely very high up their pick. I mean, he would have probably been, if not the first, maybe the second, third, fourth prospect at that. I don't know exactly at that time what their system looked like, but he would have been pretty high up there. But now he's playing for the Cardinals. He's still a good quarterback. A lot of places have him top 10 at quarterback. I don't know. He seems to want more money, or if not more, than a guy like Josh Allen or a guy like Lamar is probably going to get, or. Well, he'd probably want to match at the point or get close to what Pat Mahomes gets. And that's just not going to make sense. He has not done enough to earn that. He hasn't taken them to an NFC championship game. He hasn't really changed much there. I don't know if the culture's changed because it seems like he's very he seems to have a pity attitude towards the Cardinals organization in general. And they've went out and they've acquired talent, and they've brought in DeAndre Hopkins. And they had Christian Kirk. Let him go. They had Christian Kirk. They've got Rondell Moore now. They invest in the positions that are going to help him. Brought in James Conner, locked up James Conner. I mean, they've invested in positions that help them, and it hasn't really helped them to succeed any further in the league as far as getting an NFC championship game or even being able to be the GOAT of their own division. So I don't know that he's right for asking. That's my take. I don't know that he's right for asking for a contract at this point. I think it'd be smart for him to play out at least one more year. And then, I wouldn't, they're going to pay you, at the end of the day, you've got your college head coach there. He likes you. He's going to make sure you get paid. You're going to get taken care of. I just don't think it's a
ninth overall pick.
9th overall pick. So top 10 pick. Oakland Athletics, another L for the Athletics there. That's a rough one. I don't know that I would have. I mean, I guess maybe you would. I don't know if I would have spent that much, or not spent that much, but spent that much draft capital or whatnot on a guy that I don't even know if he's going to be going to be wearing a jersey for me at any point. I guess we could say the same thing about Heston Kjerstad at this point, which is sad, but
right.
Totally different scenario in that way. Either way, he'll be back at some point, I'm sure. So, yeah, that's what I've got on Kyler. We'll dive into – I've got a couple of prospects I want to talk about before we jump into some baseball talk and cover a little bit about Jackie and whatnot. I like Treylon Burks. I think Treylon Burks has fallen down draft boards as a wide receiver. He seems like a guy that's going to be able to do a lot and a guy that we can really feed. And I'm not mentioning about getting rid of Steph Diggs, but I don't think that we're going to be able to pay Gabriel Davis in a couple of years because I think he's really going to burst out as a really good number 2 option. And I've said, and it's on record, I tweeted it maybe 2 years ago, a year and a half, 2 years ago, early last season, so maybe a year and change ago, and that I thought that we had Anquan Bolden and Larry Fitzgerald and Stephon Diggs and in Gabriel Davis. And now we've got Isaiah McKenzie and Jamison Crowder, and I just don't think we're going to be able to afford it and be able to keep those guys around, or not those guys, but Gabriel Davis specifically around. So I think it'd be smart to draft a guy. And I like Treylon Burks. He's a guy that, from what I've heard from all scouting reports, I've looked at some film. I like him. I just like the ability that he's able to play and kind of freelance. He's not a great guy with separation from what I've read. His route running could be a touch better, but as far as ball skills and just natural football ability, he seems to have that. And I'd like to see him. I don't know that he's a guy that's going to go. I think he's going to fall in the second round. And if he is, I think the Bills should trade up and make a pick there, depending on who we go in the first round. Obviously, if we go and we get a guy, like somehow we get lucky and we get Jameson Williams, or I've looked at so many wide receivers today. I'm forgetting the name of the Alabama, but the other Alabama receiver, if we go and grab him, or if we grab a speed guy that we want to grab that's a wide receiver in the first round, we're not going to draft Treylon Burks in the second round. I mean, I would think we won't, but Brandon Beane could do anything at this point. But if we get a guy like a Roger McCreary, or if we trade up for like a Sauce Gardner in the first round, and we have the ability to maybe, I know that you'd have to trade up quite a bit to get like a Sauce Gardner or Ahmad Gardner, or get a guy that's like really high up there, like fringe top 10 guy. You probably give the capital, including your second round pick, maybe even your first round pick next year. But if we have the ability to get a guy like a Treylon Burks in the second round, that's not going to cost a ton of draft capital, I'd love to move up and grab him. Just something I want to touch on about the NFL draft before we dive in a little bit of baseball here. And for any of you Bills fans, we will be turning back exclusively to pretty much Bills football next week, and stopping my little Orioles hiatus until the Orioles playoff run later this year, when we'll dive into some more Orioles baseball. So we're going to jump into Orioles baseball now. First thing I want to talk about here, Josh, is Jonathan Means. I don't know if it's John. His legal name might be John, but Jonathan Means, and the rough injury. And the saddest part is we don't even know what's really going on with him. He could be out for like a month. He could be out for like, the year. And Brandon Hyde didn't do us any favors by telling like, oh, is he going to play? Is he going to pitch again this year? We don't know the answer to that. You can't say that to us. Come on.
Right. Like the amount of uncertainty around it's like really scary, man. Because like a guy like him who's been injury riddled in the past, he's never had like a complete season where he's been able to, pitch like normally without an injury in there. And he might need Tommy John. He might just be on the 10-day IL. We really don't know. They're not talking about it. They don't even really know what it is. He has to get a second appointment on it. I think that's happening tomorrow or something, but they really don't know. And if John Means is out of this rotation for a big chunk of this year, we are in trouble. It's not going to be good.
That's definitely something I agree with. And I think the sad part too is like there's two sad parts. One is that John Means is like really excited about this year, and he kept mentioning like, I want to pitch 200 innings. I want to pitch, and that's a lot of innings for anybody, even a guy that's majorly healthy. That's a good amount of innings to have to pitch. And I think if he was pitching 200 innings, he'd definitely probably get close to, if not clear, 200 strikeouts. A guy like John Means,
yeah, right? He gets about one an inning. That's
right.
About
so I think that 200 wouldn't be too out of the question. But yeah, it's just like, this is especially for him as a player. Like if you're not just a fan of like the Orioles and you like John as a guy, which people do, he's a really likable guy. He's a cool dude.
I have a newspaper article back here of his no-hitter. That's kind of the only thing the Orioles fans could hang their hat on for the last couple of years, up until the Mullins season last year and the Mountcastle season. But before that, I mean, it was a good Trey Mancini 2019 run, and that was it, a couple hundred lost seasons, and John Means gets the no-hitter. He's anchored this staff since he came onto the scene in 2019, and the front office has done nothing to kind of help him out in the pitching rotation, and him being gone really leaves us pretty light-handed around here.
We were already fairly light-handed. The rest of the league was laughing at our rotation. We did have, well, not the rest of the league, obviously Oakland and well, I can't even say that about the Guardians. Like the Guardians have a pretty decent rotation. Like it honestly could be pretty decent. So with the guys they have, of course, they're going to be trading Shane Bieber at some point and probably Jose, but we'll see how that goes.
They just extended Jose like 7 years, so they might be keeping him.
Were they? So I saw that, and then I also saw that like the Toronto Blue Jays fans were still like, oh, it doesn't mean anything, like because they really did think they were getting, like they think they're getting J-Ram, like they think that's a thing. It's an actual thing that's talked about in the Blue Jay community, and because I'm a Bills fan, we have a lot of Blue Jays fans here, unfortunately. So I see it a lot. They're extremely delusional. I mean, they're not as delusional as like Yankees fans, but like their delusion levels up there. Just in terms of, I think they're a good team. I don't think they're a World Series team just because they're still a young team. Like if the Blue Jays do well, on a side note, if the Blue Jays do well, like this year and they go to like the ALCS and they lose, like I'd be cool with that as a Blue Jays fan because like they're a young and experienced team. They're just going to run it back again next year.
Yeah. They got some nice pieces, man. They added George Springer last year. They added Matt Chapman this year. They added Barrios at the trade deadline. They added Kevin Gausman. They've really like bolstered the rotation, which was their big problem. And I think they can definitely make a serious playoff run this year. They can be World Series champions. I mean, the Nats did it in 2019, so that sets like all future precedents for any bad teams or maybe like light teams. But they definitely got some nice pieces there, man. There's a lot to be excited about. But with J-Ram, don't know if that's going to happen. That's a big extension Cleveland handed him. They like him a lot, and he really wants to stay.
Yeah, he's a good piece to build around. I'd like to see the Orioles do something similar. And the problem is we have like two guys like that I'd like to see them do that with.
Yeah.
Well, by the time Adley comes up, it'll be 3. G-Rod, I'm okay with like trying to just wait that out because that could get really expensive at that point.
With pitchers, you don't want to do that like so early. Like with hitters, it's maybe more necessary. But as we've seen with John Means, I mean, injuries. You never know when an injury is going to come up, and you never wish that for a guy. But you don't want to give him an 8-year contract and year 3 his arms blown out.
At the end of the day, it's a business that's about winning, and resources. And the Orioles at least say they don't have a lot of resources. They may, but they say they don't. Yeah, I mean, a guy like Cedric Mullins, I'd like to see him get a long deal. And by long, I mean like he's a little bit older guy, so I'd like to see like a 6-7 year deal. I think he'd be willing to sign that. Mountcastle, honestly, with Mountcastle, I'm trying not to put the first couple games into it because it's kind of scaring me a little bit, but I'd like to give him like a long deal too. And then Adley, if he comes up, has a good first month. Okay, Adley, this is Wander Franco's deal. We'll throw an extra $5 million per year on top of it. Sign it when you're ready. That kind of thing.
Yeah,
it should be that easy.
With Cedric, I believe he's 28 years old this year.
He's a little bit older, yeah.
Yeah, like a 6-year deal. I mean, you lock up your guy, maybe you lock him in for $22 million a year. Let's just throw out a number there. I mean, you got your center fielder for a few years, especially if he has a good season this year. You're really looking for that. He's looked promising so far. He struggled a little bit in the spring, a little bit in September last year, but he seems to have bounced back. That's the Seti we know, the one we saw tonight. And he puts together a good year this year. You definitely want to hand him some sort of extension. Mountcastle, it's tough, but I think they could give him did you see the deal Ke'Bryan Hayes got from the Pirates last week?
I'd be okay with that. It was what, was it 780 or was it 870?
I believe it was 7 years for 80, but it's just above what he'd get in arbitration. They have him guaranteed locked up for a few years.
And you're locked up,
Yeah. And Mountcastle, who's a first baseman DH who doesn't provide a lot of defensive value, even though I think he's above average, maybe slightly above average there.
I think I may be higher on him. I think he's a future Gold Glover at the position. I've seen him play really well. I think he could become one, but if he just stays stagnant or plateaus where he's at now, then no, obviously.
He's capable. He's an MLB capable first baseman. That's all you can ask. And the bat certainly has some potential there, and that's what you're paying for, really, if you throw him a deal like that, 7 years for 80. And what was the other one we said? Adley when he comes up.
Yeah, Adley's an easy. That's here's a blank check.
Yeah, you probably don't throw him 12 years because he's a catcher who's already 25. But you maybe throw him a 10-year deal, something.
10-year. You're a career guy here. You're not going anywhere type thing. And then we can stop here because I can't. Even when I hear those filthy, disgusting Yankees fans even mention Adley's sweet name, I'm livid. I can't stand hearing it. Or last year they thought they were getting Mullins. A lot of Yankees fans in this area, of course, were like, oh, well, we're gonna try. Get your disgusting hands out of here. You're not getting anything. You're gonna stay with your strikeout or home run guys, and you're gonna just kind of fade off in a year or two. I mean, you've kind of already faded somewhat. You were in the wild card game, but you got beat in Fenway.
They started Andrew Velasquez in the wild card game. You're done.
Wasn't he good for them for a little while though? He was in the show. He got one of the moments. He got he's a top Snow player. He was a top Snow player in the show.
He got a moment because he's a Yankee. He's a New York guy playing for the Yankees, so they loved him, and he was terrible though.
Oh right, because he was from the Bronx, right? That was the story.
Yeah,
from the Bronx, and he's actually decent, whatnot. So yeah, either way, John Means, to get back on track a little bit, my apologies. John Means, it stinks. And I'm at the point now where I'm like, if this guy I'm thinking, this is before I thought about it, before even thinking they might be out for the whole year. If he comes back and pitches well up until the deadline, do you just move that guy? Anthony Rizzo single in the top of the 5th. Aaron Hicks score. Yankees still trail 2-1.
At least they're playing again.
Yeah. So we'll end this half inning, then God bring down some more hailstorm.
Right. Exactly. We got to be winning though when the inning's over.
If we sweep the Yankees, we'll just be on par with what it was last year, though.
Yeah.
We swept them early in the year last year, and then
yeah, insane.
What happened. But yeah, so John Means, I think is a guy that you would think if he plays really well and up till the deadline comes back for a month and a half, 2 months, let's say. That's kind of probably pretty generous right now, but 2 months, and pitches really well. Do you trade him for a haul to like anybody but the Yankees? But you trade him with someone that really needs, the Yankees will be a team that's automatically coming calling, obviously. But if you can find a team like a Dodger type team, like the Padres, maybe even that really, really want to solidify and add a good because let's be real here, folks. I love John Means, but on a really good World Series team, he's second, third, middle of the rotation type of guy. I don't think he's an ace on those teams. Do you trade him?
This is probably not what the common consensus would be based on that precursor information, but I would say no. I mean, we're only paying him $2.5 million a year. He has 3 more years of control left. He's had the injury riddled past, so guys aren't going to be, or other teams aren't going to be willing to give out top prospects for him, even if he has a good month and a half. Yes, teams get desperate at the deadline, especially if they're a bubble team for the playoffs. But I mean, it's John Means. He's an Oriole, right? Should be, at least. He gave us the no-hitter. He's our only good starter, really.
Really should have been a perfect game. But,
It really should have been Pedro Severino, but rest his season. But
what was it, 60 or 80 game?
I believe it's an 80 game. Kind of a sad story. I don't know if you saw the whole thing.
No. What happened?
Whatever chemical they tested him positive for, it was because he was trying to have a baby with his wife. And they had some fertility issues, so they had to take a medication, but he didn't know there was an illegal substance in it, and he said he's really sorry. But then MLBPA deleted the tweets.
That's absolutely awful.
Yeah, it was a pretty sad twist on it, because I saw the same thing as you.
We were all laughing at first, obviously.
Right. It was glad he's not here, but it was a little sad when they posted that.
I don't know if I'm glad that he's not here, though, because they really didn't. I mean, he was not good, but they didn't even replace the not good. I guess they did, Robinson Chirinos, but Robinson Chirinos is just a less powerful version of him to me. I mean, so better defensively. You have to be better defensively if you.
To be honest, I've liked Robinson Chirinos. The last couple of days, he's really grown on me. He's actually drawing walks. He's playing great defense. He's got that veteran presence, especially for some of the Latin guys who haven't had that yet, because I've said this before on Twitter and on the other podcasts, but the Orioles have no culture. We have no winning culture. They've never had it. Trey Mancini is the most tenured player on this team, and he's never been on a winner. I think his first year was 2017. He barely played that season. Orioles didn't do anything that year.
He got for the wild card game, I think, against the Blue Jays when Buck, for some reason, put in Ubaldo.
I don't think so. I could be mistaken.
I thought he was on. I saw a tweet from, it might have been Locked On Orioles. I thought they mentioned that he was there for that. I could be wrong, though. I thought they mentioned that he was there. I don't think he was starting, but he could be right, though. He could be with only the losers. He may be only with the losing teams, unfortunately.
Yeah, we just haven't had anybody, man. On the pitching staff, we really got nobody. I mean, it was John Means was the veteran, and Matt Harvey, they tried to plug in as the veteran last year. But if I'm a young guy and the guy with the 6.5 ERA is coming up to me telling me how to throw certain pitches, I'm less inclined to learn from him.
Well, I mean, the sad part is and I guess will bring us to our next topic, what the Orioles could have done that they didn't do in free agency. And we're not talking about spending. I get that people think oh, I'm not the boomer that's oh, I remember, with Earl Weaver 40 years ago. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying dude, you could have spent an extra $13 million this year, and maybe you'd had to give out a 2-year contract for next year. That was not big either. Let's say over the next 2 years, like $20 million, $25 million, right? You could have spent 12 this year, or 10 to 12 this year. And you could have made your team a team that's not a 100-loss team. Yeah, respectable, at least watchable. They're fun to watch. You add a Johnny Cueto, and that would fill that void. Johnny Cueto is a guy that has playoff experience. He's been on some decent teams. He was on the Giants last year. I don't know that was he pitching towards the end in the playoffs?
I don't think he was in the playoffs, but he was definitely like down the stretch for them. Like he was in their rotation, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he might have got moved to the pen when they started. Or he may have been. He had injury too, I think.
Yeah, I mean he's getting pretty old, but there's plenty of other options out there,
But there
like
were
you
there
said.
were tons of them. Yeah, Tyler
Yeah,
Anderson.
I would love to go down. Yeah, Tyler Anderson. That Michael Pineda signed a minor league deal with the Tigers. He had like a 3.5 ERA last year, or 3.75 or something like
Who's the
that.
other
But
guy? The
plenty
Orioles.
of
Was it
options under
Pineda?
10 million.
Some
Pineda
of the
was.
Orioles really wanted that. Was a formal. It wasn't Erod though.
Are you thinking of Danny Duffy?
Maybe Dan. I like Danny Duffy. That was someone that I really liked, and he signed for pretty cheap. And of course, maybe because he wanted to go to LA and win. But you could throw, hey, I know you want to go to LA, but how about you come over and eat some crab for an extra $2 million on top of that?
Well, there's a couple guys like Matt Boyd, Danny Duffy, who were going to be injured for the first half of this year. So maybe the Orioles didn't want that because they didn't bring the innings that they were looking for, which I get. That's fine. But there's still like probably 5 other options out there.
It's probably not the reason, but yeah, we'll say
Right.
that might be. Yeah.
I sent you a list last year when this was happening.
I reference that list often. Yeah.
Yes, and I didn't make one this year, but I've seen a few people put out similar ones. You've probably got 7 major league pitchers who you can get for under 10 million a year, who would be better than Jordan Lyles and better than the other 4 rotation spots.
And there goes the game, boys. Josh Donaldson hits a 2-run home run. It's 4-2
Awesome.
Yankees.
Great.
I wonder who he hit it off of. I know it wasn't Wells because I don't think Wells is pitching right now.
They put Bauman in the game. I don't know if he was still going. They probably left him in for that top of the 5th. Bauman was good. His first batter, he threw like 9 pitches. He looked good. But.
I bet on the Orioles tonight. I had a chance to 2-run home run. Oh yeah. Oh, so Stanton doubled and tied it up first. So whoever's in is getting hit around pretty well. It's the bullpen though, but the bullpen's been doing well. I can't even say anything if they do bad.
They were locked down last night.
And that's kind of our next thing we'll touch on here before we go to our last subject, and that's the bullpen of the Orioles. It's been I would say very surprisingly good, like great.
Yeah, absolutely. Last year, that's the only thing that's holding me up is last year. They were good for the first month and a half of the year. They were top 5 in the AL. They were kind of looking like that again. And I'm just waiting for the ball to drop, I guess. But they have been phenomenal so far. It's a lot of names that a lot of guys probably don't know. Like you got Brian Baker in there, and Joey Craball, and Cionel Perez. But you've also got some fun names in there. Dylan Tate, Mike Bauman, as we mentioned. Keegan Aiken's been lights out so far out of all the names to be lights out. Jorge Lopez, former starter, who can throw 98 now all of a sudden. I think he touched 100 the other day. He hit like 99.5.
I know he was hitting 99s, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. My take has been so far in the bullpen that it's more fun this year because there's a stable rotation of guys in there. Last year, you saw those guys who got waiver claimed and then they pitched 1 appearance and they were DFA'd the next day. We saw 6 of those last year. But you're looking at guys who are probably going to stick around for a majority of the year and they're going to get the experience they want. I haven't even mentioned Felix Bautista yet, who can throw almost 100 himself and just came out of nowhere last year, made it all the way up to Norfolk, and he's on the show this year.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens with that bullpen. And I think part of that last year was probably naturally due to just being, and I don't know that it's going to be any different this year, but being outworked or not outworked, overworked. And that's probably going to happen again this year. Realistically, I don't see any difference or change in that just because of the fact that, the rotation is basically, it's not even John Means anymore. It's Lyle. So Lyles is probably the number 1. Zim is the number 2. Zimmerman, Bruce Zimmerman is number 2. Number 3 is
right now. Watkins is scheduled to follow up Zimmerman.
That's sad. Number 4 is
Tyler Wells, I guess.
Right? And number 5 is Alex Wells, or would then 4 would be Alex Wells?
We don't have a 5th starter now. And I'm sure they'll use Alex Wells. So if they are going to do this strategy, I do like the idea of them having all these long relievers in the pen, like the Keegan Aikens we mentioned, who should be the 5th starter, if that's a name you want to throw in there. Mike Bauman can go long. They have Alex Wells, like we talked about. If they call up Zach Lowther, Watkins can fill that same role. Chris Ellis, who pitched a few good games for us last year, if they want to call him up. There's guys like that in there. If you want to try to get some innings across a bunch of different guys, you can do that. It's not going to be good baseball, but you can do that if you want to get the innings through, especially if John Means is going to be out for a majority of the season.
Yeah, and you could also just not delay the inevitable, and you could bring up guys like Kyle Bradish, who's pitching well, and if you want to wait on G-Rod and be careful with him, I'm fine with that. But Kyle Bradish, I feel, has earned a major league start at this point. I mean, on this team.
Yeah, and this season should be interesting. They shouldn't have to do that long relief thing all year because Bradish is basically ready. He looked great in the spring. He had a really good season down the stretch in AAA last year. Even Kevin Smith is a guy that kind of works his way
Yep.
into that conversation. DL Hall is projected to be up this year. He was electric in spring. I believe they're working him up in Sarasota right now, where they're trying to get him.
Yeah, he stayed for
Yeah.
extended spring training, I think.
Right, and G-Rod had a similar experience. Adley's down there right now, and we may see G-Rod pitch end of the season, but I would expect to see Bradish and Hall up by preferably the deadline this year. So,
And that kind of brings me to the next thing. So, Adley, when is Adley gonna? I mean, what are we? So, when Adley comes back, I don't know when that's gonna be. He's on the 7-day IL for minor
Norfolk.
leagues, but he must have transferred. I mean, that he's past past 7 days, isn't he?
I think he's technically on the active Norfolk roster. So we have a buddy who's down in Sarasota. He works for the team down there at the training site, and they said Adley's been working his way back up. He looks completely healthy. They're just trying to pay extra close attention because he tore a triceps, or he like strained a tricep on his throwing arm. So I think they're just trying to be careful with him. But I would expect to see him middle of May, I would say. I'm sure they'll give him like a week in Norfolk just to get his bearings back in a game situation, but I would expect him up here as soon as they've done their due diligence, I guess.
If that was on his non-throwing arm, do you think we'd even be talking about it?
Probably because he still swings from both sides. So.
Yeah, true. Oh yeah, it's already Swift. That's another rare thing, folks.
Yes,
it's switch hitter, and he's an elite hitter. I mean, There's not one thing that Adley is really bad at that I can find. And the funny thing is, like, he's not even like at one of those really slow, like a Yadi Molina. Like, he actually has a little bit of like speed to him. Like, he's
technically a below average runner, but it's still like pretty respectable
for a catcher. Yeah, I mean,
especially for a catcher.
Come a long way from the days of the Sandlot catchers, I guess is the best way to put it. I know the chubbier, that type of guy. But yeah, cat's going crazy here. Camden, get out of here. Yeah, cat's name is Camden, by the way, folks.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah. Next one will be Adley, and the one after that will probably be the next one will be AJ. And that might be for the dog. The dog might be AJ, and then I think Adley will either be a cat or a dog, whatever comes next after that.
Just keep going down the top 30 prospects.
Or a son, or my next son will be Adley. We'll see how that goes. We'll hold off on that a little bit. AJ is definitely getting named after something in my household. Okay. Yeah, so Adley, I'd like to see up. I think we'd all like to see him up. I think he'd bring a lot of excitement to the ballpark. I think he'll bring a lot of pop to the team. My concern is, honestly, like I want him to win Rookie of the Year, and I think if he doesn't get up here in like the next 3 or 4 weeks, I don't know that he's going to – he may play so crazy that they have to give it to him, but I think he's really losing. Like, he'll lose a lot of time for that Rookie of the Year, and that doesn't really mean anything other than like the trophy and like being able to have something as an Orioles fan. But
this year it does mean something because I believe it's the top Rookie of the Year finisher in both leagues gets a year of service time guaranteed. So if Adley say misses this first month and then he wins if he wins Rookie of the Year, he technically still gets his 1 year of service time. So them holding him until May wouldn't matter.
So as a human, we want what's good for him, but as a logical Orioles fan, we'd have him not win the award and get slighted like Mountie got last year.
I don't care. I want him to win it. I want him to play as much as he can.
Well, you know what? That might push the button on Elias. Like maybe that's our way to push the button and be like, hey, like that's another year. He's getting closer to free agency.
Time to go, man. Don't get me started.
don't give him time to fire his management group and bring on Scott Boras. Because that's what happened. Gunnar has Scott. I know Gunner's not going to be here after his service time's up, regardless of what's going on. We're not going to get a deal with Scott Boras
unless we pay like $33 million for the all-star caliber Gunnar Henderson.
Yeah, that too. But I mean, like it's my dad's a Cardinals fan, right? And I was telling him like, oh, the Scott Boras guy, and I was like, hey, he's like, yeah, well, I never heard about him. I'm like, yeah, well, Tyler O'Neill's agent is Scott Boras. And he's like,
really?
Oh. Yeah, Tyler O'Neill's agent. Well, Tyler O'Neill's gonna get a bag, man, when he gets paid.
He's a stud, man. Underrated.
Yeah. And he looks great in the uniform too. He's like he looks like a Cardinal. Like it's the funny thing. He looks like a good Cardinal. But he'd probably look good in pinstripes too, I'm sure. So probably where he'd be headed. A shorter power hitting guy who can actually probably have a chance to hit pretty well for average, has speed. Like the Yankees want him all day. They're drooling.
He's a great defender too. Like
he's a Gold Glover.
Yeah, he's like a top 5 defensive outfielder.
On a side note, have you looked at the Cardinals, like their defensive lineup? Like, so they have Nolan, who may be the best third baseman in baseball.
It's pretty nuts.
Tommy Edman, who is also a Gold Glover. Yadi Molina, who may be the best defensive catcher to ever play the game.
Right.
Harrison Bader, who I think is a Gold Glover.
He is.
They've got Dylan Carlson, who's not bad in the field either. They've got Paul Goldschmidt, who is a Gold Glover.
Yes.
And Tyler O'Neill, who's a Gold Glover. They are full of gold. That team is primed to like do really, really well. And I respect them because they're not a huge market team, but they spend to the brim like that they can afford every single year.
They never play like below their means, spend below their means. They always build like a solid, just complete team. It's kind of what the Brewers are trying to do as well. But Cardinals get that rotation going. They just find these guys that can just produce a little bit of WAR, and then they just get to the playoffs. That 20-game win streak last year, man, that was
insanity. That was fun to watch. That made me root for them in the playoffs. And then unfortunately, they bring in, which what I think honestly led to the firing of Mike Schilt, their manager, was bringing in Alex Reyes. And the kid was like struggling towards the end of the day, like bad. I was at one of his games in Pittsburgh where Yoshi Tsutsugo hit a walk-off home run in the ninth inning. They were up like 3-1, and they had like two guys on. Tsutsugo hits a 3-run home run into the bay, and the game's over. But yeah, Mike Schilt brings in Alex Reyes or Anthony Reyes, dude. He was a Cardinals pitcher a long time ago.
I just barely remember that name.
That was so long ago. Alex Reyes, he brings in Los Angeles and LA, packed LA Dodger Stadium. Chris Taylor, 2-run dinger. See you later. And Alex Reyes was actually like a really good closer last year. I think he had like 38 consecutive saves. He broke the record for their consecutive saves for Cardinals. I mean, he wasn't anywhere close to what Zach did, but he was getting there. And 20 or so off. And either way, he brought him in, and they lost, and he struggled. So, well, let's touch on one last thing here for the Orioles. I want to get and I'm going to get this from any baseball guest I have on. I want your Orioles win prediction to end the show here. What your Orioles win prediction is? My updated Orioles win prediction at this point is 59 games. I have. Give me yours.
So at the beginning of the year in the offseason, I said 70 games was the goal. I did not necessarily believe that this team could win 70 games, but I think based on how the Astros rebuild went, how the Tigers rebuild went, how we took similar models to them, we needed to win 70 games this year. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm looking at like 64 wins.
So you're like right on the fringe there, huh?
Yeah, that's right at the over-under, I think.
How much better would you feel if they won 65 and not 64?
I don't know.
Or no, I'm sorry. How much better would you feel if they won like 62 or 163 and not 62? Like, would that make a big difference to you?
No, I think getting over 60 is important this year, but you want to be
triple digit in the L column wouldn't mean much to me. It means something to me just because people couldn't say.
I didn't even think of that aspect, but
yeah, like people will be able to say like, 4 consecutive. You know what I mean? I wouldn't have to hear that.
I don't know, man. The way Orioles fans are, they'd probably be like, we're gonna get a worse draft pick now.
Last year, I was definitely wanting the draft because we were so high up there that it was like, no, like we're gonna get a first overall pick, and like there's no way for him to if there's a consensus, which of course this year there is no consensus really. If you can talk to anybody and get 5 different answers, there's some guys that are starting to love. Last year it was Elijah Moore. Like Elijah Moore was the big gut. Am I saying that? No, Elijah Green. Yeah. Elijah Green. Elijah Moore is a wide receiver for the Jets. Elijah Green was the guy, and then all of a sudden I started seeing, well, no, that's actually not right. And then I started, well, no, that's not right. Well, that's not right. Now it's like there's like 4 guys that are up there, and if you land, you're going to be happy with it. Watch one of getting the second pick this year.
I'm not even like paying attention to draft prospects until like the week before the draft because it's so like after the first round, and obviously the Orioles have the number 1 pick, so it's kind of more interesting to talk about it. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to pay attention to any of those late first round guys, none of that. I'm just going to wait till they get picked, and then I'll analyze it.
Well, there'll be no underslotting this year for sure. I would imagine Mike Eliash is going best available.
For the first overall, I think so, but we'll see how the draft progresses.
Oh, there'll be underslotting. You can't say drafting Mike Eliash and not mention underslot. Underslot is coming. That is what that. I don't think that is like a tool he uses or a tactic he uses. I think that is his actual scheme.
Yeah, and I think for this draft, I mean, I think Brooks Lee is still the number 1 college prospect, so I'm concerned because that's Elias's bread and butter is those college bats. I don't think he ever touches high school guys. The only high school guys he has drafted are Gunnar Henderson, Kobe Mayo, and Creed Willems. So, I mean, yeah, that's a good rap sheet, but I don't think he's going to take that for the first pick.
Doesn't that kind of give it kind of gives a insight into what he prioritized? Not that he just prioritized. Obviously, he prioritized your prospects over free agents, but like the direction that he thinks this is going, it kind of gives you an insight into like he really doesn't plan to spend. Like, he really wants guys that are ready, and he's going to draft guys that are ready because he's never going to want to spend. So he wants guys that can make it up in a year or two if they have a need.
Yeah, he wants the highest floor guys with the highest ceiling, and he will go from there. The Astros did employ a similar strategy. They waited for all the prospects to come up. Elias was with the Astros when they did that rebuild. They waited for all the prospects to come up, and then they spent after they could prove themselves at the major league level, which I really hope we don't do. I want to supplement these guys with some veteran presence, with a little bit of a winning culture, and plug the holes with you're probably gonna have to trade away a lot of these offensive prospects for pitching later, but I mean that's kind of the point of this, right?
I mean, but will you? At the end of the day, you look at it and it's like you've got G-Rod and DL are my two guys that stick. So you got G-Rod, DL, and then if it's not Means, hopefully it is Means. You've got somebody else that's there that can take that spot. Zimmerman, I don't know if he'll be around. If he is, he's back of rotation. I kind of like him though. I think he's okay.
Like him. I was there on opening day, and he looked really good, man. The crowd really gave it for him. I read a story about him coming out on the field the night before to kind of like relive what that would feel like
right,
in front of the opening day crowd. I thought that was really cool.
So we'll see what happens with Zim, but that's going to wrap it up. So, folks, if you're wondering where the bets are going to be coming this week. A lot of the lines, because it's the NBA playoffs right now, my Raptors just got smoked in Philadelphia tonight. That sucked. But we just need to take one. If we can take one in Philly and then bring it back to Toronto, sweep in Toronto, we'll be good. We're going to win that. Either way, I think the Raptors are winning that either way. With Kawhi or without Kawhi, obviously. We beat them with Kawhi, on a buzzer beater years ago, but no Kawhi this year or for the last couple of years.
Iconic shot.
What's that?
Iconic shot.
Yeah, that shot was insane, man. Yeah. You could hear the
That's a top 5 like all NBA moment right there. Of all time.
That would definitely be a moment in the show. But haven't hit that. So either way, bets are going to be coming later this week, guys. Not later this week, but they'll be sprinkled in throughout the week. I'm going to try and give out 2 or 3 by the end of business. EOB, I don't know why, but end of business tomorrow. I'll have a couple. I might have one for Sunday baseball for you. We'll see. And then I'll sprinkle out a parlay or 2 throughout the week. And hopefully we can keep winning money. We've been winning tons of money since Super Bowl, guys. I mean, we're up I have to calculate it all, but copious amounts of money. We don't take daily L's. There's been I don't think we've had a day or a week where we've went negative once yet. So keep trying to take dubs there because the Orioles aren't going to get them on the field very much this year, fortunately. The Bills are great for all you Bills fans, myself included, but we'll see what happens. So for the Bank It with the Backdoor podcast, my name's Jay Don't Fade. Josh, you want to go ahead and why don't you go ahead and mention your show and your reviews one more time, and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, for sure. Follow me on Twitter at OutOfStateOs, spelled exactly how it sounds. And if you want more Orioles stuff, find the podcast account at Podcast Birdie on Twitter. We do fantasy drafts. We cover the recent series. We'll have in-depth conversations with me and my other 2 co-hosts. And appreciate you guys listening. Thank you for having me on, Jason.
Of course, man. We'll have you on again later in the season, maybe closer to draft time. We can talk some draft and we'll see what's going on then. For now,
I'll have to do my due diligence.
Oh yeah, same here. I'll have to do some more looking up here, and I think I've done more of it since the Orioles have been terrible, honestly. So, either way, that's the Bank with the Backdoor podcast. We'll be on live again next week between 9 and 9:30. I think we're gonna be on at 9 next week. We'll get rolling and we'll get those bets out to you guys later this week. For now, go Bills, go O's.